Hi guys, a long time no talk. Welcome back to Nyx Reads. Thank you so much for watching. If you like bookish content, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. It's been a while since I talked to you guys, since I uploaded a video, and you probably noticed that if I'm a usual watcher of your channel, I also haven't commented in a while. I don't know about you guys, but summers for me are usually very packed. There's always a lot going on the weekends, a lot of events. You know, the weather's nicer, at least on the hemisphere that I live on. So there's a lot of people who want to meet up, and a vacation's coming up, and just a bunch of birthdays. So there's always something, and the weeks are flying by. I know that come fall, it's gonna be peak reading and booktube season again, so bear with me. Today I wanted to check in with you for my 2024 reading goals that I set up for myself in the beginning of the year. And then I figured I'm also gonna answer some of the mid-year freakout tag questions, because I think it's really fun to kind of use that tag to check in with you, because I also love watching it from other people. But first, I pulled up my list of reading goals that I set up for 2024. Let's see how I'm doing. My goal this year was to read 70 books. And so far this year I have read 33, which technically means I'm 2 books behind, but that's okay because summer is always slow for me. I'm sure that I will catch up in fall and winter. I will say though, in the years before, I have usually exceeded my goal by maybe 10, 20 books. I don't think that's gonna happen this year, because one of the things that changed for me in the last months, since the beginning of the year pretty much, is that I'm finally back on track with going to the gym regularly. So I go to my workout classes on a very regular basis, multiple times a week, and I underestimated how much reading time that takes away from me. But it's okay. If I reach the 70, that's great. I don't need to land at 90 or 100. Next, I wanted to read 10 books in German. So far I've read 2 books. I should be at 5, but I will say that one of them is Anna Karenina, and that book is a beast. That could be counted as 3 books. And the current one I'm reading is German too. So I'm not doing great on this one, but I'm also not at 0. So I hope that I can catch up a little on this goal, even if I don't end the year at exactly 10 German books. I wanted to read 1 book in French. I haven't done this yet, but that is also because I have an exact book in mind. I already own it, the book that I want to read, and I'm planning to do this in fall, winter. I plan to read 1 book in Tagalog, which I know this sounds like another excuse, but I don't own one. My sister, who recently traveled to the Philippines, actually bought books for me, children's books, and I'm seeing her this summer. So that's when I'm gonna get a hold of these books. So that's when I can accomplish this book, but not this goal, but not yet. A goal that I'm really not doing well on is to read 3 books from Filipino authors. I've read 0 so far. Not great. I really need to get on this one in the next half of the year. But a goal that I'm doing pretty well on is to read 40 books from my own bookshelf. And yes, I am including books that I'm also buying throughout the year. It's just important for me to finally read what I own and just to have a good turnover in books. And so even if I buy books, I want to make sure that I keep reading from what I have and not just buy books and then they sit there for 5 years. And so far I've read 17 and DNF 2. That brings us to 19, which is almost exactly half of 40. So with this one, I feel quite accomplished. Then I wanted to continue 3 book series that I've previously started, and then I have to decide if I want to keep going or not. So I've done so with 2 book series so far. So I'm 2/3 of the way done with this goal. So I continued Fourth Wing by reading Iron Flame. Yes, that's the name. And I decided for myself, that's it. I'm not going to continue with this series. It's just not a great fantasy series for me personally that I want to spend more time reading these books. There's just too many other amazing fantasy series out there, maybe even romantasy series that I think I will like more. I also continued in the middle grade series, a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket. And on this one, I have decided that I'm gonna keep going, and I possibly can't even finish this entire series this year, but I'm not putting any pressure on myself. But yes, I have decided I will keep going. I'm really liking this series so far, and especially the audiobook version is quite pleasant. My goal was to read from each continent, from 1 country at least, to read a book that fulfills the criteria of being published in that country initially, and also being published in one of the country's languages. And ideally, it has to be a country that I haven't read anything from yet. What I did yesterday was I created an Excel grid where I put all of the books that I've read so far this year, and I added the publication country and the original language that the book was published in. So I didn't realize how difficult it would be to sometimes find the correct publication country, because sometimes it's also two at once, so Canada and US at the same time. So I kind of just went by what I could find. I tried the best I could. A problem that I did not anticipate at all is that there's different methods of how to divide countries between continents. I didn't realize. So now I just found an educational looking website one, a German one, where you have the division, but depending on where you look, for example, North America can also include, for example, Latin America, or sometimes Latin America and South America are in one country, or sometimes North America will include Mexico. For now, I'm just sticking to the one source I found, but does anybody have an idea how to conquer this? The shameful part is that most books I read this year so far were published initially in English and mostly in the US. Not very diverse. But then there's one book that was translated from Japanese and was published initially in Japan. It's What You're Looking For in the Library, is in the library, so that technically counts for Asia. But then again, I think, yes, I definitely read a book by a Japanese author before, so that kind of only counts half, because it's not a new country that I'm reading from. And then there's My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So this was initially published in Italian in Italy, so that counts as Europe. But then again, I'm sure I've read a book from an Italian author before. But the reason why I cannot give you an exact answer to if I'm accomplishing this goal or not is I would have to go back and catalog every single book I've ever read before. So for now, I'm deciding, okay, I'm just gonna go by this year only. Then there's Anna Karenina from Leo Tolstoy, that was originally published in Russia, in Russian, and that counts for both Europe and Asia. Then I also read quite a few books from British authors and Canadian authors, but both, you know, for those, it's also published in English. So not doing so well. This is really an eye-opener, because I do have a lot of books on my TBR that are translated works of fiction or nonfiction, but I guess if I don't prioritize it, then there's just other stuff that I get to, and I tend to, I guess, grab books that were published in English and published in the US. If reading more diversely or more translated books is one of your goals, I highly recommend logging your books like this. It was a real eye-opener for me. I will say though that this does not include if I'm reading from a male, female, non-binary author, or if the author I'm reading from is BIPOC. So for example, an American author can still be a BIPOC author, right? On that end, I'm doing better, but it's not part of the 2 criteria that I set for myself in the beginning of the year. Maybe I should revise that for next year's goal. So technically, I still need to cover Africa, Australia/Oceania, and Latin America, as well as South America. Maybe I need to have a completely separate category where it's about reading from BIPOC or diverse or non-binary authors, for example, because that is just as important. But at the same time, I do want to read way more translated fiction. So I do want to keep that criteria of translation as well. A lot to think about. Next, I wanted to start 2 new fantasy series, and I've started one new series, which is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, which was an amazing buddy read I had with Stuart, and it was really fun. I'm just honestly not sure if I'm gonna continue in the series, but yes, I started a new fantasy series. Then I wanted to reread 2 books. I have reread 1 book, so halfway there. I reread the first book of a series of Unfortunate Events series, which is The Bad Beginning. Then I wanted to create an Agatha Christie tracking sheet, a tracking sheet that can help me find specific criteria that I will judge all of the coming Agatha Christie books by, or at least the Hercule Poirot ones, so that I can rank them, all of them, maybe in a few years from now, once I've read through her entire Poirot series. And that is accomplished. I did that while I was reading one of her books. Next, I wanted to upload at least 2 reading vlogs this year, which I've already accomplished. The first one was the reading vlog where I read from only 4- and 5-star authors I have previously read. I've never picked anything up from them, even though I loved their first work, so I did that. And then my other reading vlog was to read the worst rated books according to Goodreads from my physical bookshelf. And if you found me through that video, thank you so much for sticking with me. Lastly, I had a list of 4 authors that I have previously read and loved and wanted to read from before, which this is exactly the 4 authors that were covered in that first reading vlog I mentioned. So they were Ruth Ware, Neil Shusterman, Sylvia Moreno-Garcia, and Ottessa Moshfegh. So that is also checked off from my list. Those are my reading goals. As you heard, I still have a lot of things to accomplish until the end of the year, so I hope that I can fulfill most of the goals, probably not all of them, which is odd because I thought, wow, these are for once actually all attainable. These are all goals that I know that I can achieve, but well, life gets in the way. Now let's jump into the question of the mid-year freakout tag. Number 1, what's the best book you've read so far this year? I have to say for this one, I think it needs to be Yellowface, because this one was 5 stars by R.F. Kuang. This was so deliciously evil and I was just so triggered the entire time, but I was so entertained. Very cleverly done. I think I have to split my answer because then I also have a favorite for nonfiction. It's Nuclear War, A Scenario by Annie Jacobsen. I haven't talked about this yet because I read it last month. I haven't done my June wrap up yet. This one I still talk about, I still think about. Absolutely terrifying account from an investigative journalist of what would happen if a nuclear missile would be launched towards the United States. And it's a minute by minute or second by second account of what would happen. It's definitely more US centric, but obviously the repercussions are for the entire world. Basically annihilation, right? Absolutely terrifying. I can't stop thinking about it. It hasn't let me go. I need to buy myself my own copy because I got this from the library because I already feel like I want to reread this. What's the best sequel of 2023 so far? This one goes to The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. I already really liked The Maid, the first book in this cozy murder mystery series where we have a neurodiverse maid as our main character, and I just really like her voice. And it's a great murder mystery where you kind of can follow the clues and can unravel the mystery as you read along, and at the same time it's cozy. I like the characters a lot. It's so heartwarming. I really like this, and I love about the sequel that I liked it even more than the first one. The first one was 4 stars. The sequel I gave 4.5 stars, and this one too, I put a hold on the audiobook because I kind of want to reread it. What's a new release you haven't read yet but want to? So the first one that comes to mind isn't out yet. It's coming out in, I think, end of the year. It's The Mirror by Nora Roberts. It's coming out November 19th. Now, last year, for the first time ever, I read a Nora Roberts book, Inheritance. It's number 1 of the Lost Bride trilogy. I had 0 expectations. I just wanted to try this author out because she's obviously everywhere. And I loved this book. Looking back, I should have had this as an honorable mention in my favorites. There was just something about this book that just hit all the spots for me. It is just so good. Let me just tell you what it's about. I'm not selling this very well. So our main character is Sonia McTavish. She's a graphic designer, a really good one, by the way. It was so good to read about a character who's so passionate and really good about their job. Anyways, so she has some kind of a crisis, so she has to rebuild her life. So she learns that she has a long lost relative who left an inheritance for her, which is a Victorian mansion on the Maine coast. So the setting is absolutely fantastic. Now, while she's there, she learns that there's somewhat of a curse on this house, or I should say ghosts that roam around this house, because there's been a series of tragedies to the women who lived in this house before her across multiple generations. So she has to figure out what is going on. Then she also meets the people who live in this small town and builds great connections. So it was just such fun to go through this book. I'm really excited for the sequel, which is called The Mirror. Okay, the next question is, what is the most anticipated release of the second half of the year? I guess I kind of answered the first question wrong. Maybe I should have talked about a book that is already out. An answer for a book that has already come out. It came out on May 21st, 2024, and I was approved for an e-arc on this, but I haven't read it yet, is Lies and Weddings by Kevin Kwan. He wrote the Crazy Rich Asians trilogy, which is just so much fun. And I don't even know what this is about. I guess it's about lies and weddings, but this one I'm also excited to read because I know that Kevin Kwan's description of lavish wedding settings and food are just great. What was your biggest disappointment so far? I think my answer is Women Talking by Miriam Taus. Not because it was completely overhyped and I had heard so many things about it. It is because I didn't like the POV that the author decided to use for this very important story. This is a fictional account of something horrible that happened to women in a Mennonite community. They were drugged in their sleep with animal tranquilizer, essentially, and then sexually assaulted by the men in their community. So this actually happened, and then this is a fictional account of it. And I really didn't understand why the author chose a male POV from someone who previously left the colony and then came back to tell this story. It really took me out of it. If you want to know more details, you can watch my latest May and April wrap-up where I go into a bit more details. But that was a disappointment because this book otherwise could have been a 5 stars, but I just really didn't like the way that the author decided to tell the story. What was the biggest surprise? For this one, it's The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James. I know that a lot of people love this, which is why it was so high up my TBR, and I finally wanted to read it this year, and I did. I just did in June. That's why I haven't featured it in my wrap-ups yet. But I didn't expect to like it so much. I think I gave it, or I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars because it's a bit more campy than I thought it would be. I expected this to be more like a thriller, maybe with a bit of police procedural, but it went in a different direction, and I really enjoyed this one. It was so good, and I really liked the POV split that the author decided to do in this book. It's so good. Who's your favorite new author, debut or new to you? For this, honestly, I have to say, again, Simone St. James, because as soon as I finished The Sundown Motel, I immediately was like, okay, give me more from this author. If her other books have the same vibe, the same quality of writing, the same unputdownableness and cast of characters, then I definitely want to read more from her. And I got really excited because I know she has a lot more books out. So my answer to this is once again Simone St. James. Who's your newest favorite character? I really have to think about this one. I'm not sure. Nobody really stood out to me. Maybe Circe from Circe by Madeline Miller, just because the goddess that she is at the beginning of the book is not the same goddess she is at the end of the book. There's such a great story arc to her persona that I really liked. What's a book that made you cry? I have to pass on this one. I don't think any of the books I read so far have made me cry. Lastly, what's the most beautiful book you bought or received this year? I don't have a good answer to this because I've been focusing so much on reading from what I have that I didn't buy as much as I usually would have. And none of the books that I bought or received, I don't think I received any books, are that beautiful. So nothing really stands out to me. What kind of a sad answer is that? Let me see. Okay, actually, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is pretty. I didn't love it as much as I thought or I hoped I would, but it's still a gorgeous book cover. I love the dark colors and the whimsical element to this. I know that there's also lighter book covers, but to be honest, I preferred this one. It's really beautiful. That's all for the tag questions. Let me know how your summer is going in the comments down below. Do you also read less during summer, or is there such a season where you happen to be more busy and have less time for reading? I'm just very curious to know. I hope you're having a great reading month. If you just want to let me know that you're still watching, why don't you leave me a mushroom emoji? I'm also curious about your reading goals. How are you doing? Do you even set reading goals up? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe if you love watching bookish content, and give this video a thumbs up if you also kind of enjoy chattier videos like these ones. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.